sellouts, Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, false flag, terror attacks, Bill Gates, Henry Kissinger, New World Order, mind control, Bank of America stealing homes with cut and paste mortgage loans, police, state, taser guns, FEMA camps, man to run, Monsanto rules the food supply while Big Pharma dopes your mind. Prison system, puppeteers, foundations, fund the beers, fund the evil through the years, the world's not as it appears. CIA smuggles drugs while Wachovia and Wells Fargo launder them, then give the proceeds to the owners of the Federal Reserve Bank. Now the IRS takes money out of every single check. Money they created out of thin air and leave you with debt. They want to make you a serf, a slave to their demand. They want to take your life in every way they can. Fluoride, GMO, vaccines, chemtrails, United Nations genocide. The world they show us is not real. This is how they kill and steal. Rothschild, Bundy, Rockefeller, Club of Rome. On the Georgia Guide, soldiers written in stone. Cut through the matrix, awaken to the lies. Do not be hypnotized. We are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A lot of things have been happening again. I have some interesting stuff to go over for today's show. I have a deep, detailed analysis written and compiled by Chris Milligan, who's the editor of Conspiracy Theory Research, on the Order of the Skull and Bones. And we can go into that into a little bit of detail. I also have planned this, book-sized document. I mean, it's thicker than a screenplay. Maybe Gone with the Wind, you know. Anyhow, this particular law is the Cyber Security Act. Now, the Cyber Security Act that was just put into place has quite a bit of dangerous stuff in there, as far as it superseding other laws and controlling vast areas of communications. So it's, again, there's just so much. Now, why else would you need to have a cybersecurity law that's 205 pages is beyond my understanding. Now, if you just go into any sections of it, the definitions in this act, the commercial information technology, commercial items, covered critical infrastructure means system or asset designated by the Secretary as covered critical infrastructure in accordance with the procedure established under Section 103. It just goes back and forth with all this. It's, again, basically at the discretion. Critical infrastructure is the term that has been used, given meaning to the term of the U.S. Patriot Act. Remember that, and now, of course, we have using the Patriot Act as a way to detain Americans now with the National Defense Authorization Act 1031, 1032. Now, what happened with this is that we had this setup starting really with Clinton, but really being accelerated with Bush. And the first Clinton had the anti-terrorism bill, and again, targeting patriot movements and patriots and other quote-unquote right-wing people like radicals, like Eric Rudolph types, the bombers, these Christian fundamentalists or whatever you want to call them, the extremists, the abortion people that blow up abortion clinics and stuff like that. Demonizing an entire, using it as a scapegoat, I should say, not demonizing, using it as a scapegoat for these particularly deranged individuals, as being some sort of a movement to justify the implementation slowly over time, as they have done. to bring in this police state that we are now subjected to. Now, we really are subjected to a police state, and the cybersecurity thing, it's just beyond being such a small thing. I mean, I don't know if I can even get into the skull and bones if I keep digging into this law, but I'll try to cover everything with that today, and some other news that I have actually tucked away over here that's recent events. But I thought this was important because I had compiled it over time, and now reading through it, it's just that they define incidents, they redefine incidents, referring to certain things and other codes. It's very craftily written, I must say, and in the sense that it's there's a lot of devil in the details here, ladies and gentlemen. So I implore you, you can get it. It's a PDF. I found it, and you don't have to necessarily print it, but I thought it would be appropriate, and then I could read from it. So you have so much of it that is just unbelievable. Now, the term federal agency has meaning given to the term agency. So it is now, again, they're using the federal information infrastructure is the critical point, information infrastructure. So the cyber attack, I think, is more prevalent. I think the attack that they're going to be working on here, because there's just so much, scuttlebutt about it, really, is some sort of a cyber attack, some sort of a cyber false flag, like Stuxnet or something like that, which was knocked out the computers. Now, I realize that you have a large group of people that are working literally against our government and against the interests of the United States, that are not paid by the CIA or other minions or other establishments in big oil and big pharma and the other conspirators in bringing in the New World Order. But these folks are individualists that have their religious viewpoints or whatever. I mean, recently, a good friend of mine mentioned to me that I believe it was in Chicago that there were some neo-Nazis like hanging out in some bar, and people came in and with black masks on and beat the shit out of these guys. And said, and they were from the anti-fascism coalition or something like that. Some sort of a, they called themselves something. They made a press statement. It's out there. You can look it up. Interesting transitions. A lot of things are going on. Things are changing. I noticed that. I don't want to digress too much, but definitely the Chicago situation and the NATO summit with the G8 and Camp David, this whole coagulation where the media is really saying that nothing has really happened. It's everything that we all know about. Meanwhile, of course, Bilderberg is just a week away or so, a little bit longer, at the end of the month. And that's the intention here is this is maybe the showpiece. These meetings are the showpiece, but the real bread and butter of the operation, the real way that they decide what's going to be happening and the decisions they're going to make are at Bilderberg. Interestingly enough, there was the Omega Society, the Omega Club, which had people such as, from the turn of the century, people such as Woodrow Wilson and also Mark Twain and governor of Ohio, I forget his name. A few of these guys, they all got together about affairs of the world in Buffalo, or prior to the assassination of McKinley. And it's theorized that McKinley was assassinated because of some of his viewpoints towards isolationism, towards not being involved with this growing world order, which is pretty much what we're talking about here. The reason for Truth Talk News is because of the New World Order. I mean, if everything was real
and we actually got the real news. And obviously these criminals would be behind bars and things like that, and their riches would be given back to the people, and there would be less bloodshed in the world. But of course, these oligarchs are really running the show from the top. And what I mean that is, like, you've got to look at a company that I keep bringing up many, many times, like a company, for example, a holding company called Rita Zellweger, which has many, 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 many different diversifications. Mostly, of course, all in media, but mostly in the print. They print all the propaganda, pretty much newspapers, 15,000 magazines they own across the world. That's a tremendous amount of magazines. It's a lot of influence. They print all the books that are taught in medical schools. They print Cell and Lancet. See, the way they do this is they collectivize all of these influencing factors, and that creates society, or the society that they wish us to believe is reality. And it is, of course, not. It is a false reality, because we are not living with truth. Awakening to truth and sharing the truth is the only way we're going to stop these people. So the truth of the matter is that we've been tremendously lied to by very evil, sadistic, horrific people. You can just look at this in history of who these people have backed. Again, last evening, I spoke about Smedley Butler and how he was approached by these interests from basically General Motors and the oil interests and others. Of course, the same players. Okay, the owners of these corporations, the same players. Now, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers have worked in unison. Of course, they had sometimes have been partners and sometimes even competitors. But in the end, it's really the Rothschilds who have the say in what's going on, and the power is going through London, and this has been going on for many, many centuries. And remember that even the monarchy of England is a front, and it's a puppet front. Yes, the Queen has power, and yes, she has influence, but she's not even German. Excuse me, she's not even British. She's German. Her name is Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. The Rothschilds come from Germany. There's a connection to them, of course, the banking connection, but even higher levels. One could say that the Rothschilds are royalty, although and they are, of course, married into it through generations of various connections to the bloodline. But I think that it's fair to say the way that Lord Rothschild is presented in the media and the way that he is protected, especially in the London media, and the way that the people of the United Kingdom look up to this royal couple that just got married, and as this, and everyone loves them, and then in America they come to America and it's this whirlwind thing, and and he's a pilot, and he's great, and he's done all this stuff. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, these are the people that are controlling the interests of our nation. The control through Israel as being a centralization to solidify the oil interests of the Queen and her cousin, Queen Beatrice of the Netherlands, for Shell, Dutch Shell, and of course the Rockefellers. And that's why we have the wars in the Middle East. Now, I don't know how I went from this interesting start to get to this whole point, but I guess I must continue. But in closing with the Cybersecurity Act, how it relates to this whole thing is, well, look, what I'm doing right now is telling you absolutely true information. That's factual, that's verifiable, and that you can find in any referenced manual, such as the World Order, which is a great compiled work from the Library of Congress by Eustace Mullins, and other works. None dare say it's a conspiracy, and other works regarding the Rockefellers and the influence of the Rothschilds. Many documents pertaining to this, and And it's always laughed about that they really don't have all this influence and that they really aren't controlling things, and that's the way the books like Rita Zellweger publishes, who are owned by the British Crown and her cousin, of course, again, Queen Beatrice. It's the Dutch and the British connection. That's who owns Rita Zellweger. And it's the people through there, their front people or whatever else, because again, they have so many ways to disguise their actual holdings, but we know who they are, and we know their companies, and Chase Manhattan Bank, and Citibank, and J.P. Morgan Chase. I keep saying that, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Citibank, it's Rockefeller, the Rothschilds, Bank of America, Barclays, other connections. It's just unbelievable, the influence that they have on society. And now, it wouldn't be such a bad thing if they weren't such, Machiavellian tyrants, evil, satanic, Luciferian worshipping beings that are intent on literally destroying what we know to be civilization, to bring in a technocracy of experimentation on wild, insane, delusional type fantasies, like Ray Kurzweil's having us literally plug like hard drives into our heads, and eventually our bodies won't be necessary, and they love him, oh, he's great, and it's unbelievable where we have developed to, or where we have become as a species. And then these same elite people that love these thinkers of these futurists, they call them transhumanists, futurists, okay? H.G. Wells, they embrace the science of it. The Rockefeller Foundation founded Big Pharma in 1913, interestingly enough, same year as all of the other tyranny that we've been put under with the Federal Reserve, the IRS income tax. It goes on and on. What else? The founding of the foundations so that they can have control and hide their money and look like they're doing all this benevolent stuff. Creation of many things happen in 13. I'm leaving something out, but I don't want to digress. So they've been controlling the big pharma by just basically also influencing all the schools. Now, the Rockefeller Foundation funded all the medical schools, funded all the medical research. Now, this is what they were doing on the cuff, right on the sleeve that everybody could watch, right on their sleeve, but on the cuff, hidden under the cuff, as we moved into the fascist regimes of Hitler and the Soviet-style, the Bolsheviks and everything, and the scientific dictatorship was moving into a new realm with the Nazis getting into the Mengele horrors and other ideas of this specifically perfect race, which they are really trying to achieve. They are trying to bring about this perfect being. And I know it's crazy, it sounds nuts, but it is absolutely true. And we have come to the point where I think humanity has reached the point where the disinterest in what really matters in the world and what really matters to ourselves has been ripped apart, has been decimated. So we have no. It's like we're numb. It's like because it is. America is like a whore, and it's like a prostitute that was once a beautiful, young person who is now a broken, numb, going through the motions as they're being violated, But at least a prostitute gets money. What they're doing to us is similar. They're raping us and taking from us. And we are numb to that because we've been conditioned to it. Just like a pimp abducts a victim and gets them all hooked on drugs and has them gang raped. Just as they do that, that's what these New World Order elite are doing to us. They're raping us, they're hypnotizing us by mind controlling us through the media, by drugging us right off from Big Pharma. I mean, forget about the illegal drugs, okay? Forget about narcotics. It doesn't even pale in comparison to the troubles and dangers to society of Big Pharma's psychotropic drugs, which cause suicide. The side effects of these medications are worse than what they're supposedly trying to help. So this has been going on, but the public is just numb. They're just numb. They've just been raped and pillaged so much that they're just unaware. And the pain is sort of like not really, I mean, it's tolerable for most people. They don't want to look inside themselves. They don't want to look inside the possibility that they've been deceived. They don't want to look at the world and say that it's really not this great, beautiful place, that our country is not this great, beautiful country that they tell us that it is. And I say they, it's because like the controlled mainstream media. It's like the same thing with Israel. People don't understand in America the terrorist state of Israel, because it literally is. They do tyranny upon their own people. Now, our country, unfortunately, our government does the same thing to us. Not in such a grand scale. And at the same time, there are many aspects of liberty that are free and open and accelerating. But back to this, cybersecurity. So what I'm telling you is factual stuff. And they don't want me to say it. They want me to stop. They want to know that nothing in this subchapter will amend any law regarding the authority of any head of any agency. I mean, you could just open it up to, listen, and say, well, that's just dangerous stuff. And it's like you read through it, no matter what you pull out, another page. A report on the preparedness of federal courts to promote cybersecurity. Not later than 180 days after enactment of this act, the Attorney General, in coordination of the Administrative Office of the United States Courts, shall submit to Congress on whether courts have granted the right, timely in matters relating to cyber crimes. And it includes appropriate recommendations, and of course they want to be able to just look into anybody that they believe might be a cyber criminal, which is just anything. So they want to shut down the internet. We know this. They want a kill switch. They want there to be... Now, God forbid anything goes wrong in this country, like all of these fear-mongering people like Alex Jones that continues to feed fear, and others that feed fear into the people, to get them to revolt. The Occupy Wall Street movement, I think, is a fear-based mind control psyop, just like Harry and I were talking yesterday on air. And again, we are broadcasting here on truthbroadcastnetwork.com, and give a thanks out to Harry Link and Pam Suggs at UnitedTruthSeekers.com, and thanks to everybody that's listening. I'm sort of been like on a rant, the last 25 minutes or so, but it's real important that we understand how this cabal works and who the players are. I mean, the players are the real key. If you understand your enemy, then you can fight him. If you don't really know who he is, it's dangerous. It's difficult. Like, look at Vietnam. People going, and they didn't know the enemy was hidden in trees. You couldn't see him. The fact of the matter is that the oligarchs are planning on destroying the money system, basically destroying the dollar. They've been doing it since 1913, slowly. And they've been putting the country into debt. It's massive debt. It's ridiculous debt. We can never pay this debt off. $17 trillion, and they want to raise it again. The election season is obviously just a farce. These candidates are all puppets, basically. You're talking about a puppet. It doesn't really matter if it's Obama or if it's Romney. Either way, it's Robomney or Obama or whatever you want to, however you want to classify it. The way we can change this country is through liberty and freedom, and supporting any candidates that are doing that. Gary Johnson from the Libertarians, Ron Paul. That moving the country in that direction is what we have to do, in my opinion, as a nation, is also to wake people up to the fact that that's the answer. I mean, the true answer is so simple. It really is very easy. All you have to do is go back to the Constitution. We could solve all of this trouble just by going straight back to the Constitution, and that's fact. We don't have to, worry about the fact that if you lay off all these people in the government, oh my God, there's not going to be any work. Well, no, it's been proven. And this is one of the reasons why I like Wright so much, and I really I know that Gary Johnson's running for president for the Libertarians, but Wright, I mean, these guys would make they're a perfect like tag team. I love them both. They're great Americans, and say it like it is. Fact is that for every bureaucrat that you fire, you create 150 jobs. So that's an interesting fact. So you just fire a lot of people, and that was his position. How would you help the economy? Well, I'd fire a lot of people, and that was just taken interestingly. But if you really understand what he meant by that, you'd see where we're going here. Is we need to get our government. We have to fire people. Yeah, we have to get these positions. There are too many of them. There are too many of them. It's a bloated government by design. Now this has been documented by people that, again, the conspiracy theory. You're a nut. Welch is a crazy person. John Birch Society. He's nuts. He was right. He was dead on. You gotta give them that much. And the same thing with other people that have warned us. Larry P. McDonald, who again is one of my heroes. You can't even put him as one of your heroes on. He was a politician. He was a congressman. You cannot put him on Facebook and like him as being one of your persons. It doesn't accept it. It won't work. Why? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because his uncle was General Patton, and that he had access to basically a militia to protect and take back the government in the event that there was a communist takeover. And he had plans to protect the government about that, to protect our government, with the republic, okay? Remember that. You see, we no longer have a republican government, but we are a republic. And this is very important. So the traitors are those who go against the republic, not those who fight the traitors or expose them for the evil criminals that they are. All right? The truth is that we have some very out-of-control people controlled by these money interests through their lobbying and their political schmoozing, and sometimes outright payoffs. Okay? It's not just all about getting elected, so they want to have this and that, and I'll get you this and you give me that. There's outright payoffs to go, and then you have positions of power put into place. Very important things, such as Michael R. Taylor from Monsanto being put in charge of the FDA food, and now potentially he's in line to run the whole FDA. Now, can you imagine Monsanto's former vice president, top lobbyist, and top attorney running the Food and Drug Administration? Okay? You have these appointees that have been put into place specifically to move along this scientific technocracy, to move along the agenda of the elite, which is to, first of all, to make us better. That's why it's like, these people look like, like the cat lady. They get plastic surgery and all these crazy bitches on TV with the mafia wives. Did you ever think about this? They're mafia wives. They're on television. Gravano's daughter or wife or something's on one of these shows, didn't they want to kill him? Don't people want him dead? You know, look at what's going on. Look how controlled even that is. Look at how controlled our environment is. The mob wives. One of them has look. I mean, her lips. She looks like a fish. But you know, I mean, it's interesting. You know, my wife likes to watch some of these shows, and I still can't understand why. But very good social commentary. But again, their husbands are in jail or get out of jail, and then they're in the show. Yeah. So come on. I mean, this is telling you that they're involved in this whole thing directly, or they'd be dead. There's something going on. I mean, you have to just use your mind to think about that. You have to understand that anybody that's really been a true threat to the New World Order has unfortunately ended up 6 feet under, or you know, thrown out of a hotel window at 13th floor. Interestingly enough, 13th floor, Frank Olson. So you have a real conspiracy, and that's the only word to use, and it's not a theory. So for those that might be listening that are not aware of how this thing all came about, is you have a gaggle of elitists, and this can like segue my way into the Skull and Bones, that have for many, many centuries actually sort of ruled, you know, the nobility, and in history books they call them the nobility, you know, the bourgeoisie, you know, but history leaves an awful lot out. I mean, it leaves out far more than it includes. And that's a fact. I'm just looking in recent modern history because, again, Vinny Be the Truth, who is my co-host on Saturdays from 5 to 8 p.m. on We Are Change Connecticut on Informed Radio and ProjectFreedom.ws, also broadcast here on Truth Broadcast Network. He is more into the ancient history, or farther back, even further back than 500-600 years, even goes deeper, but very well read on ancient history, where I sort of have more of a I call contemporary history, you know, the last maybe 250 to 300 years, you know, that I'm really pretty much solid on. Although this conspiracy goes back even further. Traces back to the bloodlines of Egypt, if you really want to delve into the deepest recesses of it. And again, that's where Vinny's really good. So you should tune in on Saturdays from 5 to 8 p.m. We do a good show. We have a lot of great guests coming on as well. And of course, in a half an hour, we have Harry Link joining us, with, of course, Death to the New World Order. So I think that the Skull and Bones is a good example of the way of one of the societies. Now, there are many of them. There's the Scrolling Key, and these are all actually in Yale. These just a couple. There's 3 or 4 of them at Yale, but there's many, many of them. Different orders, going back to the Masons, and it's a Masonic order, the Skull and Bones. The origins of it begins at Yale, which is here in Connecticut, and it basically has a founding in what's going on today. So when you think about today, and you think about the fact that the CIA brings in all of these drugs, you know, albeit heroin or cocaine, depending upon the variants of the area, with Afghanistan with the poppy, and of course you have all the famous cocaine connection with Mena, Arkansas in the 80s, and the Contra scandals. I mean, they've been caught many times in recent history as well. Planes falling filled with cocaine. They fuel the drug things. Talking about another patriot who's lost his life, Gary Webb, who wrote a couple of books, and the second book got him killed. He was warned to not publish it, and he did, and the information in the book was there that they didn't want to see, and all of a sudden he decided that it was time to shoot himself twice in the head while he was in the shower or in the bathtub. Yeah. So these people brought the cocaine, the crack cocaine. The original crack epidemic started in Los Angeles, and this was uncovered by a CIA safe house that Gary Webb uncovered and found out that they were actually they fabricated it, created the whole thing, got the whole operation going. This is what they do. So this is why I'm beginning about the CIA. Including very, very prominent people have been members of Skull and Bones who are CIA. Very prominent members have been presidents who are members of Skull and Bones. Now, how it all started was the opium industry, the drug trade. So, like things were then, things are now. The old adage, I think it's an Italian saying, I forget how it goes, God rest my mother's soul, she would have remembered it, but it's something that's like things were, they are, you know? And it's true. So you have the origins of Skull and Bones being pirates, basically. See the idea of the skull and crossbones? Okay. Now, it was founded by a guy by the name of Elihu Yale, and he served with the British East India Company, and he eventually became the governor of Fort St. George, Madras, in 1687. He amassed a great fortune and returned to England, and in 1699 Yale became known as a philanthropist. Upon receiving a request from the collegiate school in Connecticut, he sent a donation and a gift of books. After some other subsequent bequests, Cotton Mather, who was the head of the school, or the whatever they call in those days the schoolmaster or whatever, suggested that the school be named Yale College, and that happened in 1718. Now, a statue of Nathan Hale stands at the old campus at Yale University. I've seen it. In fact, I'll get some footage of it. We'll be taking a trip down there in the future. And there's a copy of that statue also in front of CIA's headquarters in Langley, Virginia. Another one stands in front of Phillips Academy in Andover, Massachusetts, where George H.W. Bush went to prep school and, of course, joined a secret society at the age of 12. So they have, like I said, many societies, but the origins of the Skull and Bones continues on with the Russell Trust, who funds it. Now, in 1823, Samuel Russell established Russell and Company for the purpose of acquiring opium in Turkey and smuggling it to China. Russell and Company merged with the Perkins Boston Syndicate in 1830 and became the primary American opium smuggler. Many of the great American and European fortunes were built on the China opium trade. Of course, that's history. Now, the interesting thing is that Nathan Hale was also a member of the Culper Ring, which was America's first intelligence operation. So the intelligence operations seem to come out of the Skull and Bones as well. And now that was established, for those that are listening, it's by George Washington. It was a successful effort throughout the Revolutionary War. So one of the biggest frauds in American history is to say that, certainly when George Washington chopped down the cherry tree, he didn't tell a lie, and he didn't tell his father that, I never tell a lie. Well, he told a lot of lies in the Revolutionary War, and that's the way we won it. There was a tremendous amount of intelligence operations going on in the Revolutionary War, and it's a very fascinating thing to research and look into. The Culper Ring is especially good. There were methods that they had, the way that they hung certain garments that were to be washed or they were drying. They would be sheets or bed linens or a shirt, and it would be a symbol of something for them to give a message, and all sorts of really, really like outrageous stuff, hiding things in musket handles and messages, and very, very, what you would call, Hollywood-esque type stuff that was really going on. And that was very interesting, too. Now, of course, he unfortunately was hung, as you know. They got him. But he did, of course, say that he wished that he had more than but one life to lose for his country. To give for his country, and that's again giving against tyranny, and I think that's really what we're trying to do here, all of us again, is exposing the fact that these are really the same people. even back then, I mean, they stood up against these tyrants who were interested in again, acquiring a world government for a very, very long time. The Congress of Vienna was where the bad blood between the Tsar of Russia and the Rothschilds sort of festered there, because they were trying to get world government, and that was in 1787. So you have this period of time where the world government was they've wanted this world government for a very long time, and they've been working towards it for centuries. And finally, it's at the point where they can pull it off because everybody's asleep on drugs, pharmaceuticals, addicted to foods that make them sick and dumb them down. That was reporting. I have some news articles, but I could just go through the news. I mean, I read this too in a recent article that the food additives that they're putting in here, polysorbate 80 and stuff like that, and then you have other additives that are actually dumbing you down. They're actually affecting your brain capacity. I do have some interesting news. I'll get to that, but let me go through in the next few minutes, because we have about 20 minutes to go here. Just getting a note here from Death to the New World Order coming up at 10 p.m. with Harry Link. Excellent. Okay. I'll do that as I can, but we'll move on. Harry just sent me a message. Anyway, so we have the Russell Trust, which was established for the purposes, as I said, with the opium trade, and the chief operations was in Canton in China. He was Warren Delano. Ring a bell? He was the grandfather of Franklin Roosevelt. And other Russell partners included John Cleve Green, who financed Princeton, Abiel Lowe, who financed the construction of Columbia. These names are very important as well, Columbia. Joseph Coolidge, and the Perkins, Sturgis and Forbes families. Coolidge's son organized the United Fruit Company, which, again, we went to war for the United Fruit Company, went to the war for Standard Oil in the Philippines to protect their interests, like we go to war to protect the oil companies and the interests of these big corporations now. So things are as they were. They are. It's really sad, and I just, it amazes me that people can't see this. And it's written in history. It's on paper. You can just look it up. And you got to do a little bit of work because they don't put all the pieces together, but they're there, and you can make a cohesive puzzle of it. You can say, well, wait a minute, did that really happen? Did they really send General? I keep going on Butler because I just watched a really informative film on his life. Did they really send Smedley Butler down there in the Philippines because the Standard Oil to protect their interests while they were trying to get oil contracts? Yeah, they did. So would they do that now with ExxonMobil? All the profits they make? Come on. The only difference between then and now is that now we have the internet. And I keep dovetailing back and forth between the cybersecurity law, which now, of course, there's no warrant required. If there are any laws that go against this supersedes those laws. Look that up. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. It's just, I mean, again, I keep going back to this whole things of these threat indicators. Threat indicators, and that's why they want to monitor you. That gives you the excuse so they can monitor you for a threat indicator. This is going in a very bad direction, ladies and gentlemen. And it's skull and bones and these controllers. And we have, the way it works is that they've been since 1832, since it was founded, the tomb The society was founded with Alphonso Taft, who was the father of William Howard Taft, who later became president. And according to information acquired from a break-in, of course, we know this now to be true, they stole, Prescott Bush stole Geronimo's skull, and supposedly it's in Skull and Bones there in New Haven, Connecticut at Yale. And what happened was when they formed this place, again, it goes back to this connection that I told you to Germany, because there is a big connection to Germany. Bones is a chapter of a corps in a German university, and General Russell, its founder, was in Germany before his senior year and formed a warm relationship with a leading member of a German society. And he brought back with him to college the authority to found a chapter here, and that's the way that it was founded. So class valedictorian William H. Russell, along with 14 others, that's why there are 15 tapped every year, became the founding members of the Order of Skull and Bones. And it later was changed to Skull and Bones with a S-K-U-L-L. It was originally S-C-U-L-L. Now, the secretive order exists only at Yale. 15 juniors are tapped each year. They are given $15,000 and a grandfather clock. And far from being a campus funhouse, the group is geared more towards the success of its members in the post-collegiate world. And that's what they do. That is what they do. So, the people that have graduated and the families' names that have gone through the ranks of Skull and Bones are quite a long list. They include Lord Whitney, Taft, Jay, Bundy, Harriman, Weyerhaeuser, Pinchot, which is Pinchot family, Rockefeller, Goodyear, Sloan, Stimson, Phelps, Perkins, Pillsbury, Kellogg, Vanderbilt, Bush, Lovett. Goes on and on. Now, William Russell went on to become a general and a state legislator in Connecticut. Alphonso Taft was appointed to the U.S. Attorney General, Secretary of War, which many people who are bonesmen have been Secretary of War. Interestingly enough, of course, intelligence, you see. Ambassador to Austria, and of course Ambassador to Russia. Couldn't have that, wouldn't be complete without that. And that's also another post that's held by many bonesmen, the Ambassador to Russia. Now his son, William Howard Taft, class of 87, is the only man to be both President of the United States and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Now, what are the secrets of the Skull and Bones tomb? The order flourished from the very beginning in spite of occasional squalls of controversy. There was dissension from some professors who didn't like its secrecy and exclusiveness, and there was a backlash from students showing concern about the influence that these bonesmen were having over Yale finances and the favoritism shown to them. So in October of 1873, the Iconoclast was published in New Haven. It was only published once, and was one of the very few openly published articles on the Skull and Bones. And from this article in 1873, here's an excerpt. Out of every class, Skull and Bones takes its men. They have gone out to the world and have become, in many instances, leaders in society. They have obtained control of Yale. Its business is performed by them. Money paid to the college must pass into their hands and be subject to their will. No doubt they are worthy men in themselves, but the many whom they look down upon while in college cannot so far forget as to give money freely into their hands. Men in Wall Street complain that the college comes straight to them for help, instead of asking each graduate for his share. The reason is found in a remark made by one of Yale's and America's first men. Few will give but bonesmen, and they care far more for their society than they do for the college. Year by year, the deadly evil is growing. The society was never as obnoxious to the college as it is today, which was in 1873. And is just as this ill-thinking, ill-feeling that shuts the pockets of non-members. Never before has it shown such arrogance and such self-fancied superiority. It grasps the college press and endeavors to rule it all. Interesting, right? College press, rule the college press. Well, they rule the mainstream media, don't they? See how it all comes together? It's a nice little even yet detailed spider web. It does not design it does not deign to show its credentials, but clutches at power with the silence of conscious guilt. Again, it's a secret thing. They do these things covertly, like putting these poisons in the food supply, and the vaccines, and the other big pharma drugs, and the water, the fluoride. There's a lot. I mean, on September 29th, 1876, a group calling itself Order of the File and Claw broke into Skull and Bones' tomb and found Lodge Room 324 fitted up in black velvet. Even the walls were covered with the material. 22. The Sanctum Sanctorum of the temple, furnished in red velvet with a pentagram on the wall. In the hall are pictures of the founders of Bones at Yale and the members of the society in Germany, where the chapter was established here in 1832. The raiding party found another interesting scene in the parlor next to room 322. On the west wall, hung among the pictures, an old engraving representing an old burial vault in which, on a stone slab, rest 4 human skulls grouped about a fool's cap and bell, an open book, several mathematical instruments, a beggar's scrip, and a royal crown. On the arched wall above the vault are the explanatory words, in Roman letters: "We wart der Thor, we weiser were Bettler oder Kaiser," and below the vault is engraved in German characters the sentence "Ab Arb Ab Beich Ab Toda Gleich." The picture is accompanied by a card on which is written from the German chapter presented by D.C. Gilman of D50. Very interesting. So they have all of this. They make war. That's what they're there to do. They're evil, warmongering eugenicists to depopulate and cause order out of chaos, the New World Order. So these evil bastards have a large list of people that have grown out of the order. The networks of power have moved on. People have been secretaries of war, like Stimson was a Bonesman, Secretary of War in 1911. Appointed William Howard Taft, who was also a Bonesman. Hoover, Secretary of State Hoover. Hollister Bundy, William Bundy, George McBundy. Incredible that the list of these people. Now again, Averell Harriman and all of these people, they funded the infrastructure, or helped the infrastructure of the Soviet Union to survive after the Bolshevik Revolution. This is all on record. And in 1932, the Union Banking Corporation had enlisted 4 directors from the 1917 class and 2 Nazi bankers associated with Fritz Thyssen, who had been financing Hitler since 1924. So, I mean, this is an old story. The connections, as I said later, Averell Harriman, as Minister to Great Britain in charge of Lend-Lease for Britain and Russia, was responsible for shipping entire factories into Russia. According to some researchers, and my research confirms this as well, Harriman also oversaw the transfer of nuclear secrets, plutonium, and U.S. dollar printing plates to the USSR. So there you go. There you have it. The controlled, and now who gets the Falcon and the Snowman? These people, they get all busted. Well, you know, again, it's just like the drug trade. Okay, the big drug busts. Oh, they come all this. You think that it's nothing. The real people aren't getting caught. The real people are controlling the investigations, the directions of the investigations, and who gets a pass and who doesn't. And that's factual. It's over and over again. And then you'll get a big bust, someone that's really connected, and then they'll end up dead. Something really big, if there is, because obviously there is real opposition to this in the legal sense, that there are actual people that are fighting these drug dealers. Unfortunately, they're led to these lower level people that are not really the ones that are responsible for the trafficking, the higher levels. And well, I mean, I'm exposing all the truth here, as well as the fact the United Nations is involved in much of the sex trafficking as well. That's on record too. So you've got all of these elitist elements in these big foundations and organizations and entities, or for what do you want to call them, institutions, okay? And they're just doing very evil, terrible things. All right, now, it goes on with a lot of things. For example, after President Franklin's alien property custodian signed vesting order number 248, seizing the property of Prescott Bush under the Trading with the Enemy Act, the order published in obscure government records, and it kept out of the news. This was kept out of the news, gee, we think, and explained nothing about the Nazis that were involved, and only that the Union Banking Corporation was run for the Thyssen family, German, because after all, there was no war. It's 32, but technically it was leading there, and they were German nationals. Decided that Prescott Bush and other directors of the Union Banking Corporation were legally frontmen for the Nazis, and the government avoided the more important historical issue of what way were Hitler's Nazis themselves hired, armed, and instructed by the New York, London clique of what Prescott Bush was an executive manager. On December... Oh, actually, what I was saying. Yeah, the Trading with the Enemy Act happened in 42. I apologize. So we were at war at that time. Obviously, they were enemies. So in 32, they weren't, but they kept their relationship. 42, and of course, they were at war. We were at war, but they kept their interests going. Same thing with Rockefeller, funding Standard Oil Fund and working with IG Farben, basically as one company for the entire war, and all the other industrialists, military industrialists, that profited immensely from the misery of the 100+ million people that died. It's unbelievable. Anyway, so the New York Times in December 1944 ran a 5-page article, or paragraph, a 5-paragraph page article on page 25 of the December 16th edition that it was all about the entire incident. The last sentence refers to the Nazi bank as the Union Banking Corporation. Never said anything. So this was, of course, kept out of the news. And this is how they operate. They have some very, very interesting members who have... Bill Buckley was a member over the years, things that people would remember. It's just unbelievable how they've maintained this order through this collection of people that they choose. We know about John Kerry and George Bush, that's obvious, and the Bush family's all through it. We also have, let's see, anyone else that people would remember? Senator Jonathan Bingham, class of 36, Skull and Bones, Bingham family, big in Connecticut. Anyhow, we have the war on drugs, which is an intellectual fraud. Now we know that. Francis Mullen, former head of the Drug Enforcement Agency, called Bush's efforts to Vice President Bush at the time, back in during the interesting situation with the Contra affair, that basically Francis Mullen, who was the former head, called him an intellectual fraud and a liability, which I think is absolutely true, of course. On and on about these controllers, but George Bush really was the controlled interest there. In the administration of Reagan, he really had much more control. Interestingly enough, like Cheney had more control, or much. He was basically controlling the presidency of George Bush. Interestingly enough, very, very obvious as well. So we had a long little chat here about various things about the New World Order. I never did get to any news, but I'll try to cover some tomorrow. It's sort of good to get all this out. Literally run out of my car from work and come through the door and have about 2 minutes to just start everything and get the show rolling. But it'll get smoother as it moves along. I want to thank Harry Link again for all his help and his support to help me get my message out, or the message out, I should say, to the people and to wake up the sheeple. And thank you again, Harry, and thanks to Pam Suggs and UnitedTruthSeekers.com, who promote us on all ends, and thanks to Jim Russell and We Are Change Connecticut, and my co-host on We Are Change Connecticut, Vinny B. The Truth. We'll be on again live 5 to 8 p.m. this Saturday, Eastern Standard Time, here on TruthBroadcastNetwork.com, also on InformedRadio.com and ProjectFreedom.ws. So moving along here, I want to thank everybody for joining me here. I hope everybody had a great day. I'll see you all again tomorrow, and death to the New World Order. over here that's recent events. But I thought this was important because I had compiled it over time, and now reading through it, it's just that they define incidents, they redefine incidents, referring to certain things and other codes. It's very craftily written, I must say, and in the sense that it's there's a lot of devil in the details here, ladies and gentlemen. So I implore you, you can get it. It's a PDF. I found it, and you don't have to necessarily print it, but I thought it would be appropriate, and then I could read from it. So you have so much of it that is just unbelievable. Now, the term federal agency has meaning given to the term agency. So it is now, again, they're using the federal information infrastructure is the critical point, information infrastructure. So the cyber attack, I think, is more prevalent. I think the attack that they're going to be working on here, because there's just so much, scuttlebutt about it, really, is some sort of a cyber attack, some sort of a cyber false flag, like Stuxnet or something like that, which was knocked out the computers. Now, I realize that you have a large group of people that are working literally against our government and against the interests of the United States, that are not paid by the CIA or other minions or other establishments. This goes back and forth with all this. It's, again, basically at the discretion. Critical infrastructure is the term that has been used, given meaning to the term of the U.S. Patriot Act. Remember that, and now, of course, we have using the Patriot Act as a way to detain Americans now with the National Defense Authorization Act 1031, 1032. Now, what happened with this is that we had this setup starting really with Clinton, but really being accelerated with Bush. And the first Clinton had the anti-terrorism bill, and again, targeting patriot movements and patriots and other quote-unquote right-wing people like radicals, like Eric Rudolph types, the bombers, these Christian fundamentalists, or whatever you want to call them, the extremists, the abortion people that blow up abortion clinics and stuff like that. Demonizing an entire, using it as a scapegoat, I should say, not demonizing, using it as a scapegoat for these particularly deranged individuals, as being some sort of a movement to justify the implementation slowly over time, as they have done, to bring in this police state that we are now subjected to. Now, we really are subjected to a police state, and the cybersecurity thing, it's just beyond being such a small thing. I mean, I don't know if I can even get into the skull and bones if I keep digging into this law, but I'll try to cover everything with that today, and some other news that I have actually tucked away. A lot of things have been happening again. I have some interesting stuff to go over for today's show. I have a deep, detailed analysis written and compiled by Chris Milligan, who's the editor of Conspiracy Theory Research, on the Order of the Skull and Bones. And we can go into that into a little bit of detail. I also have planned this, book-sized document. I mean, it's thicker than a screenplay. Maybe Gone with the Wind, Anyhow, this particular law is the Cyber Security Act. Now, the Cyber Security Act that was just put into place has quite a bit of dangerous stuff in there, as far as it superseding other laws and controlling vast areas of communications So it's, again, there's just so much. Now, why else would you need to have a cybersecurity law that's 205 pages is beyond my understanding. Now, if you just go into any sections of it, the definitions in this act, the commercial information technology, commercial items, covered critical infrastructure, means system or asset designated by the Secretary as covered critical infrastructure in accordance with the procedure established under Section 103, just in big oil and big pharma and the other conspirators in bringing in the New World Order. But these folks are individualists that have their religious viewpoints or whatever. I mean, recently, a good friend of mine mentioned to me that I believe it was in Chicago that there were some neo-Nazis like hanging out in some bar, and people came in and with black masks on and beat the shit out of these guys and said, and they were from the anti-fascism coalition or something like that. Some sort of a they called themselves something. They made a press statement. It's out there. You can look it up. Interesting transitions. A lot of things are going on. Things are changing. I noticed that. I don't want to digress too much, but definitely the Chicago situation and the NATO summit with the G8 and Camp David, this whole coagulation where the media is really saying that nothing has really happened. It's everything that we all know about. Meanwhile, of course, Bilderberg is just a week away or so, a little bit longer, at the end of the month. And that's the intention here is this is maybe the showpiece. These meetings are the showpiece, but the real bread and butter of the operation, the real way that they decide what's going to be happening and the decisions they're going to make are at Bilderberg. Interestingly enough, there was the Omega Society, the Omega Club, which had people such as, from the turn of the
UN Agenda 21, bailouts, sellouts, Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, false flag, terror attacks, Bill Gates, Henry Kissinger, New World Order, mind control, Bank of America stealing homes with cut and paste mortgage loans, police, state, taser guns, FEMA camps, land to run, Monsanto rules the food supply while Big Pharma dopes your mind, prison system, puppeteers, foundations, fund the beers, fund the evil through the years, the world's not as it appears. CIA smuggles drugs while Wachovia and Wells Fargo launder them, then give the proceeds to the owners of the Federal Reserve Bank. Now the IRS takes money out of every single check. Money they created out of thin air and leave you with debt. They want to make you a serf, a slave to their demand. They want to take your life in every way they can. Fluoride, GMO, vaccines, chemtrails, United Nations genocide. The world they show us is not real. This is how they kill and steal. Rothschild, Bundy, Rockefeller, Club of Rome. On the Georgia Guide, soldiers written in stone. Cut through the matrix, awaken to the lies. Do not be hypnotized. We are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.